Welcome, everybody. It's nice to have everybody back for our third and final episode of Holistic Medicine during our summer series. It is such an honor to have Mindy Eisenberg return. She did do a session with us about a year ago, and we're so honored to have her back to talk about mind-body stress reduction today. So we will have, starting us off with Dr. Miravalle, who is our division chief at Rush University Medical Center, with a little bit of science, and then we'll dive into more of the practical approach with Mindy. As with all of our other sessions, we do want to make this as interactive as possible, so please feel free to use that Q&A box to pose any questions that you have, and we will pause occasionally and address any of those as we go through this 1 hour long session. As always, we will continue our conversations on brain health the second Monday in September, and hope to see you back then. So a little bit about Mindy Eisenberg. So she is the founder and director of Yoga Moves MS, which is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. The mission is improving the quality of life of individuals with multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and neuromuscular conditions. She is the author of Adaptive Yoga Moves Any Body, created for individuals with MS and neuromuscular conditions, as well as Adaptive Yoga Cards, Daily Yoga Moves for all ages and abilities. Mindy has provided yoga therapy to individuals with neuromuscular conditions for well over 2 decades and thrives on building a strong, mighty community for her students and families. I know she is dearly loved within her community, and I can always sense that whenever we meet with her and her patients. She is a qualified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, a certified Butako. Am I saying it right, Mindy? Butako? Buteyko, sorry. Breathing instructor, heart math certified instructor, and Reiki master. She created the widely acclaimed annual Holistic Health and Wellness Forum for MS, which we have been so privileged to participate in as well. Thank you, Mindy. And Mindy presents for National MS, corporate and yoga therapy organizations, and has trained hundreds of adaptive yoga instructors. She has a bachelor's of science from Northwestern University and a Master Health Services Administration from the University of Michigan. So great to have her back with us. Clearly, we have the expert in this realm. Love to hear what she has to say today, and I will turn it over to the both of you to kick us off. Dr. Miravalle?
Thank you, Kathy, for hosting this. And Mindy, thank you for being here. You truly, as Kathy mentioned, you are the expert. And so why don't you tell us? Yeah, no, you are. You should take those credits.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about you and what you do with Yoga Moves.
So with Yoga Moves, we provide, and we have provided, adaptive yoga for people really we've evolved now. We started with Yoga Moves MS. We've evolved to anybody, because even when we began, people came with a friend or a care partner or a family member and wanted to join. They didn't want to observe. So, right. And really, yoga is for anybody, and anybody should be able to benefit in the way that suits them, that fits their current way of being.
Absolutely.
And so we provide yoga that's in a chair, which many people have seen. We provide yoga that can be actually done in bed, and yoga that's standing. So it's for anybody. And we're going to talk about mindfulness today, which very often people think of meditation. and breathing. So after you talk about the science behind it, we can delve into more of these practices.
Excellent. Very good. And I don't know if you can see my screen.
We sure can.
We see
Okay.
your screen.
You can see my screen, but I cannot advance the slides, but that's okay. So what I was hoping to do is, let me just come here and go back to screen sharing mode. Okay. So it's all right. So what we can do is kind of talk about the benefits of yoga in terms of let me just stop sharing here. In terms of what is the science behind mindfulness and here and yoga, in terms of what parts of the brain are being affected, because over the years, one of the things that we learn is that first the studies that focus on yoga and mindfulness were looking more into symptom improvement, and the classic ones are improvement in depression, in anxiety, perhaps in spasticity, more of these neuromuscular symptoms, and how through these techniques patients can actually improve some of those outcomes. But perhaps the area that is most interesting is what has been happening in the last decade or so, which is diving a little bit deeper into networks in the brain. And one in particular that I want to talk today is called the default mode network. And so the default mode network is something that we are learning now more frequently, which is this group of nuclei in the brain that are kind of interconnected with multiple highways. And the function of this network was not clear up until recently, that it became clear that this network becomes inactive or suppressed when we are receiving external stimulation. So like, for example, now you're listening to me, so there is external stimulation coming to your brain, so the network is suppressed. Or let's say that you're typing or you're reading a book or you're listening to music. You're focusing on a task, the network is suppressed. But then the opposite happens when you're blocking all external stimulation and you're focusing more on internal stimulation. Like, for example, mindfulness or being present in the moment, listening to your body, or things like, for example, daydreaming. So I think we all, particularly those of us who are introverts, right? Sometimes we go home, we close the door, and it's like, I don't want to listen to anything. I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to be quiet for a minute. And that's where this network becomes active. So why am I talking about this? Well, that switch between on and off on this network is what allows our brain to consolidate memories. The switch between this network on and off is what allows the brain to understand things like social perception. And this is kind of like something that is an evolving area, for example, understanding how others perceive you, understanding how you respond to others, like empathy, for example. So all of these kind of higher cognitive functions are dependent on the ability to suppress or activate this network. I don't know if I'm being clear with so far the story. It's kind of like a complicated story. So that switch on and off from this network is something that we are born with, but unfortunately, certain conditions can affect that ability to switch on and off. The classic one is what we call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. And as the name implies, people with ADHD have this state of hyperactivity, and then also they have deficits in attention. And the number one reason is because they cannot switch this network on and off. And all of a sudden, you have this external stimulation and you cannot consolidate those memories. So it feels like you don't have attention because that information is never getting to the places they should be. And interestingly, in those conditions, mindfulness and meditation-based strategies have shown to be beneficial. And I have a few more things before I ask you to kind of like react to this information. We have a large patient population here with multiple sclerosis. We know that MS patients also have a dysfunction in this network. Dysfunction particularly in being able to suppress the network when are exposed to external stimulation. So all of a sudden, sometimes patients tell me, I can't remember anything. I have problems with memory. And then you start diving a little bit deeper, and actually memory is fine, meaning the retrieval of information is fine. But the problem is the information never gets to the brain. So it's more of an attention deficit. And an attention deficit, one of the main factors for that, is not being able to suppress this network. And so that switch on and off becomes dysfunctional. And then one of the consequences of that is attention goes down, memory appears to be impaired, but then irritability, anxiety, and brain fatigue becomes more of an issue, right? So knowing that, and knowing that mindfulness is perhaps one of the strongest ways in which we can reactivate this network, right? So when we focus on ourselves, on our internal stimulation, maybe can you walk us through what is mindfulness and how we can actually practice mindfulness in our day-to-day life?
Yes, well, thank you for that. And I want to discuss some of what you were saying, but let's start by practicing mindfulness.
Okay.
Don't get scared or anything. So no matter what you're doing, wherever you're listening, whether you're cutting vegetables in the kitchen or you're sitting on your sofa, or maybe you're riding a bike and listening to us, whatever it may be, take your mind to what you're doing. Notice your body, whether it's on the sofa or standing in your kitchen, and sense your hips if they're on a chair or your feet on the earth, and feel whatever your body is touching. It could be the air on your skin or the clothes on your body. And at the same time, take a few breaths in and out and just notice. Don't try to change your breath, just become aware. So that's a key word, aware and attentive to your body and your breath at this moment without trying to change it in any way. So I'm going to be quiet just for about a count of 10 and just become aware of your body and your breath in this moment, whatever sensations may come up. Great. So sometimes it's nice to just take a pause, just as you start a podcast or even starting your meal, and take a pause of where you are just in this minute, because mindfulness doesn't have to be, I know it's kind of scary. People think mindfulness and they immediately think of Buddhas or having to sit still and not move, be in the dark, close their eyes, and most importantly, they think they have to shut off their mind and not think anything. And so that all can be very scary. And we just did that for really a few seconds. And there's a lot of myths going along that you have to sit or you have to be in a certain position, but you really can do it. Practice mindfulness no matter what you're doing. Because really, is my teacher, John Kabat-Zinn, who's literally been studying this for over 40 years, he says life is the incubator. It's the laboratory. That's where we study. It's really the act of living. And so John's definition, and I reference him a lot because he's really the father of mindfulness in this country. There's a few other, like Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach, those might be familiar to people in the audience. But so these leaders came up with what is mindfulness for really for us in this country or in the West. So mindfulness is the intention to pay attention on purpose in the present moment. There's some add-ons like no judgment. People find that one really hard. Refraining from judgment and adding in compassion and loving kindness. So sometimes people do a gratitude practice and that becomes their mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is often called heartfulness or wakefulness. And what's most closely associated with it is a paying attention to your breath, because that's usually the first step. But we can practice it in other ways. Some people may feel that focusing on their breath causes anxiety, and we certainly don't want to do that. So for some people, focusing on sound is a nice way to be in the moment. You might not even notice that some sounds are going on in the room until you pause to really focus on sound. And the other one that really is very helpful for the mind-body connection is sensation in the body. And that's key. So it could be the sensation of breathing in your body.
That's very helpful, Mindy. Thank you. And so one of the questions I always get when we talk about mindfulness is there any amount of time that is required for mindfulness to truly be effective? I mean, you said something, you don't need to be in the Buddha room with candles and a gong to do mindfulness, and I agree with you. But in terms of the amount of time, is like 5 minutes enough, or you have to do a little bit more?
So in terms of a broader perspective of time, MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, the program was designed over really decades until it got fine-tuned at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center in the pain clinic by John Kabat-Zinn and his people in the lab. But what they found was that 8 weeks of a practice helped to really solidify it, and they were able to measure the changes. Actually, now can be measured in the brain. They can look at the brains of meditators and compare them, and there's been studies of non-meditators, and you can see places in the brain, in the hippocampus, correct me if I'm wrong, where it lights up. And they've done lots of studies now on monks in monasteries who really, it's amazing what their brains do. I remember telling this to people years ago, like over 20 years ago, and they thought I was crazy. Yep. I'm like, no, they've done studies. They know that the people who meditate have their brain is lighting up in different ways than other people.
Absolutely. And, I have the slides that unfortunately I cannot share. I don't know why. Teams is just always gives us a surprise. Today's surprise is we can't share the slides. That's all right. But I'm sure Kathy can share the slides with the audience in case they're interested. We can send them the slides. But I had actually that study that looked at, as you said, the hippocampus, which is this part of the brain that it's deeply linked to memories. And, we all learned in med school, particularly those older than me, that once you're born with certain brain cells, there is nothing you can do to gain new brain cells. Well, that's not true. And what we learn is that some parts of the brain, the process of neurogenesis, which is the creation of new neurons, is possible. It's only a small proportion of brain cells can grow, or you can develop new brain cells. And one of those areas is the hippocampus, which is deeply located into the temporal lobes, right in the middle of the memory neighborhood, okay, in the brain. There are 2 activities that we can do that have the strongest association with promoting neurogenesis in the hippocampus. One is exercise. And that's why we always talk about the benefits of exercise and brain health. The other one is mindfulness and meditation. And you're correct, because these studies looked at the density of neurons and the thickness of the hippocampus in people who meditated for years versus those who didn't meditate. And there was a substantial difference between both brains. So, do you need to be a monk to be a meditator?
No, you don't. So you asked about time, and I always tell my students, if you have to be a monk, then I'm out. No, so MBSR and mindfulness were really brought to life for householders. We call ourselves householders because we're not in a cave. We're living the life. And so I always tell people, start where you're at. So if you find that sitting for 30 seconds is what you can do, then start there, because that will have an impact. And then for someone who thinks they can do 3 minutes, go for 3 minutes. And you can literally set the timer on your phone and set it for 30 seconds and see how that is for you. There are so many different apps, which we can talk about later, but that are online, and you can go to YouTube and you can go to all different kinds of apps that are out there that either have timers or will talk you through a guided meditation. So some people would prefer to sit and some people want to be talked through it. And most of the time, beginners want to be talked through it. I mean, sometimes I'm in a mood. I've been doing it for over 25 years now, and I want to be guided. And there's all different kinds of voices out there in different ways and different focuses. You might do one, there's a loving kindness meditation. You can send compassionate feelings to others out there. That could be your meditation. Mindful listening, that's not even necessary. You could call it a meditation, but I guess in its purest sense, it's not. Mindful listening, mindful writing, mindful eating. So do we want to work up? In the MBSR program, they teach us to work up to about 20 minutes. A real serious mindful meditator might get up to 40 minutes twice a day, but we have to be realistic where we're at. What can you fit into your day realistically? And usually what I find is people start and then they incrementally add on time and they realize that it goes really fast. But when you first started, it could go really, really slow.
I think that's excellent, Mindy. And actually, you just answered one of the questions that came through as to whether writing is considered meditation. So sounds like it is.
Yeah, really, anything you do. So I love the mindful journaling. So one of the practices we do in the mindfulness class is you could just sit down and write your thoughts. Don't pick up the pen or pencil or type, right? And just keep writing. Don't think about punctuation. Don't think about spelling. Just keep going with your stream of thoughts. It's a great practice. Put the timer on and just write for a minute or a few minutes. And even after that, read what you wrote, or maybe read not for punctuation, but just for the stream of thoughts, and circle any words that pop out at you. I've done that in class. It's very, very interesting. And people usually, there's some big light bulbs go off. And one of the things that goes off is that our thoughts are repetitive. So throughout the day, our thoughts repeat. Our brain, correct me if I'm wrong, but our brain is meant to think. And so it thinks and it doesn't stop thinking. It just keeps going. And people think with meditation that they have to stop their mind from thinking, that it's going to become a blank slate. But that is another myth. We cannot stop can we stop the mind? Is there a way to stop it?
Well, you're actually exemplifying the most critical function of the default mode network. We go back to what we were talking before, right? So it's this network of brain structures that actually may have more of an impact in the higher cognitive functioning than what we like to think, that being able to switch it on and off is critical for optimal function of the brain. So the brain naturally, as you said, is going to be a sponge for information, for stimuli, for everything that we throw at the brain is going to capture that, right? But then what we do with that information, how we weed out the things that we don't need and how we consolidate the things that actually we are meaningful to the brain, that process requires activation of the default mode network. If we don't activate that, then all we do is just receive information, and that information is garbage in, garbage out, right? So you can't select what is meaningful, what is not. So the selection process happens when you activate this network, and you activate the network when you shut off everything from outside and you focus on internal functions. And one way, like again, daydreaming will be one, planning, being quiet, right? Don't listen to headphones all the time. As much as we like to promote music and brain health, sometimes silence is all we need, right? So those moments are critical, and I think that's exactly what you're saying. Being able to shut off and shut on the brain, it's critical.
So I was reading a stat. It was based on a study that I think it was Harvard, where the average person spends 45% of their waking time distracted.
I believe it. Yeah. And
it goes along with the example you gave with ADHD, or just being easily distracted by what's coming in, all the information and the phones. And but what they also found related to that was the degree of happiness.
Right.
Have you heard of that happiness study that was done out of Harvard? And there's a class you can actually take. I think it's for free. But the more distracted we are, the less happy we are.
Right. And again, that has to do to the ability of focus and again, be efficient in switching those on and off from the brain, saying, okay, I'm going to listen now, I'm going to consolidate, right? So those two functions of the brain are critical. If we start to blur that, that's when inattention happens. That's when the consolidation of memories fail. And so we talked about ADHD being a disorder that has a dysfunctional default mode network. Alzheimer's is another one, and MS is another one, right? So and that's why in multiple sclerosis, sometimes patients feel that they cannot shut down the brain. They feel that all their thoughts are there and they can't put those thoughts together into something meaningful. And that's why sometimes taking these breaks, incorporating mindfulness, it's so effective.
So
and
can it help with like cog fog?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And just to wrap things, and I want to move to yoga because that's truly why we have you here. You're the yoga guru, right? But
before, Dr. Miravalle, really
Yes.
quickly, before we jumped into this next chapter of today's session, there was a question from another Kathy in the audience that was asking you, Mindy, if you do provide mindfulness classes.
We do. So we have we offer on-demand classes. So you can go on our website. It's yogamovesanybody.org, and there's recorded meditations. We have mindfulness and meditation with Mandy on Wednesdays. So you'll find a bunch of recordings for that. And you also can join us. It's at, don't quote me, I think 10 o'clock on Wednesdays, but that's Eastern time. So And she does a little combination of yoga and meditation. It's an hour of some meditation and some very gentle yoga that you can do in bed, actually. And I should mention that there's different types of meditation out there. There's the other big one is mantra meditation. And mantras where you repeat a certain intention or word, or a Sanskrit word has this vibrational quality to it. I just want to put that out there, that is another type of meditation that sometimes people gravitate to. And there's benefits of each. But yes, we do offer that.
And just again, it's yogamovesanybody.org, correct?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I believe there was a question about, if you can't shut off those thoughts during meditation, what's the purpose of that? And I hear that sometimes patients saying, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. So based on what you just mentioned, there are different types of meditation.
But I want to stop that person who said it didn't work. And that's another myth. Because again, we can't stop the mind. So no matter what you do, it's not going to stop. Whether it's the mantra or it's the breath or it's the practice. So you said I was a guru, but I won't agree with you on that. I'm sorry. But mindfulness is a practice, and so is yoga. So we don't become gurus. It's always about where we're at in that day. Like I might wake up and be sore or tired or very energetic and ready to go. And so the practice you alter the practice based on your needs, but we're never perfect at it, or we're always perfect at it. So no matter what happens, it is an experience. So if we were practicing mindfulness and focusing on our breath, and yes, this is not an if, the mind will wander. There's no question the mind's going to go somewhere else. We know that 47% of the time we're distracted. So the mind is going to go about what you want for a snack tonight, or what you're going to do after the podcast, or what you did earlier in the day, or what needs to be done tomorrow. It's going to happen. But the practice of it keeps bringing us back to the present moment. So if you notice, or when you notice that your mind wandered, then that is the practice of bringing it back to that moment of the present moment.
That makes sense. This is the first time I understood that, by the way.
Oh, see, that's what's sad, because I think it's sad because people are scared of yoga and they're scared of meditation. And honestly, meditation has got to be so powerful. And we can all do it. We can all do it. And people think they're not good at it, so therefore they shouldn't do it. It took me, so that 8-week program is where they learned, and that was from a daily practice. And you start with just a few minutes. So I highly encourage, just check it out. And some of these apps will even help you track, or from your brain health, how to track your program, how to track some of these practices. But never feel like you can't do it. And by the way, you could have a session where you did not notice that your mind wandered and the buzzer went off. But that experience in and of itself is the practice.
Right.
And then you'll notice over time that you did notice your mind wandered. And when you notice your mind wandered, then you're practicing mindfulness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which, it's fascinating when you start looking at all the functions of the brain, whether it's exercise, training, playing an instrument, language, mindfulness. It's all the same principle, right? At the beginning, you're going to do it and it's not going to feel right. And the more you practice that, when you pay attention to circumstances, to context, to day of the week, mood, all of that is going to affect performance. But at the end of the day, repetition, right, is what improves function. And we've seen that over and over and over, that cortical activation decreases as we become more proficient at something. And that's how you perform better. So what you're saying makes complete sense.
Absolutely. It's the continuity of the practice.
Kathy, any other questions for mindfulness and meditation before we jump to yoga?
No, I don't think so. I think we captured everything so far.
And I have some stats here. We can send that in the when we send the presentation. But I have some articles from 2019. This is a great article. It's called "The Neuroscience of Meditation: Classification, Phenomenology, Correlates, and Mechanisms." It's a great article, great read. And the highlights is meditation help with anxiety, depression. Meditation help with chronic pain, and also sleep quality and insomnia. So those are the functions that actually meditation has the strongest evidence in all individuals.
Yeah. Some people say, when should I meditate? So you mentioned sleep. I mean, some people do it before going to sleep. I think the studies would say, and your teachers would tell you to try to do it when you're awake, not when you're about to fall asleep. But I always tell my students, if that's when you can do it, then do it then. And it really can help your sleep quality.
That's excellent. Alrighty. So I feel empowered now to try it. I'm going to give it a try. And talking about trying, Mindy, you made me try yoga.
I made you get up. You got up for what was it, 6 in the morning?
It was 6 in the morning. Yes. And
wow, he's actually here.
So here we are
Fabulous,
in a national MS conference called CMSC, or the Consortium of MS Centers. And I saw Mindy the night before, and she's like, tomorrow you're coming for yoga. It's like, oh, Mindy, I've never done yoga in my life. I'm going to be so embarrassed, right? And so I go there.
In the back corner.
Exactly. I decided to go in the box thinking, hopefully nobody sees me, right? So I'm doing yoga, trying not to fall and thinking about all these embarrassing things I could be doing. And next thing I know, I'm just looking up, and this row of colleagues that I know very well had to pass me, jump over me to get to the 7 o'clock conference. So pretty much all my colleagues saw me doing that. But I have to say, Mindy, I felt so good after that event. It was so relaxing and actually intense. It was quite an intense exercise. So tell me, what is yoga?
So I'm going to take us back for a minute and say that part of that MBSR program is mindful movement. They decided not to call it yoga. And so yoga really is, one way to look at it is it's mindful movement. It's literally paying attention to the act of moving or breathing. Breathing is fundamental to yoga. Breathing is fundamental to most meditation practices. They're very much connected. I look at yoga as a big umbrella. And under the umbrella is breathing and meditation and lifestyle factors, which you talk about in your program, in your brain health program. And then we have this movement. And movement is what has been most prominent in our culture. And then what's really been is the hot yoga, right? People talk about the hot and the fast-paced yoga. And that is where people gravitated to, but that's not the essence of yoga. That's one way to do it. But the real essence is the breathing as you move. And so you're attuning to your breath, you're attuning to the sensation of moving. That's the yoga. It's a very rich, it's a science, it's an art, it's a lifestyle. It can impact your lifestyle very much. We do here, I have stories of people who tell me they are in pain or they've got chronic pain, and that it can very much help them. People with pain often identify with their pain and think they're the process, they begin to think they're their pain. Right. And that they are pain. So the mindfulness and the movement can help to kind of soften that belief or defray that belief.
Yeah, I mean, but you mentioned pain, and it could be so debilitating, right? For people, pain becomes the strongest sensation that people have, and then you draw your attention to pain, right? So with mindfulness, with yoga, you in a sense distract that attention away from pain, and the stimuli still is there, but the brain doesn't pay attention as much. It doesn't acknowledge that as often.
So one of the practices, which seems irrational or unnatural, is to actually focus on the pain in a way with your breath, but not to label it, not to judge it, to just kind of be with it. And of course, if it's excruciating, terrible pain, that's not the place to do it, right? But to be with the pain is part of the practice, because mindfulness, again, is being. It's a state of being. And so you're being with it, and you start to notice things. My students tell me they notice things. Like, for instance, it changes. The sensation changes over time. It's not a constant, but it may seem that way until we pause and take that break. So there's practices where, and this is getting into the detail of how to cope with pain with mindfulness, but one might be first dabbing your toes in the water by focusing on a part of your body that's not in pain. And then titrate over to an area that maybe has a little pain, and then go back and forth a bit with that, and start to notice that it's not the whole body that's in pain. There's many things that people notice, but what we find is, what do you want to do when you're in pain? What's your initial instinct? What do you want to do?
Be pain-free.
You want to be pain-free. You want to run from it. You want to get away from that pain. And what we find is that pain knocks on the door even harder when you run. The harder you run, the harder that pain goes. And so if we can kind of quiet that down and be with it, and that's what John found through the pain clinic and the studies, was if we can find a way to be with it without into that fight or flight mode, right, it actually it became easier to cope with the pain.
Right. That's a great way to kind of explain why there's so many benefits of yoga, not only in pain reduction, but also in things like emotional regulation, which ultimately it is one emotion, stress reduction, anxiety, depression. But also you get the benefits of the movement that you're describing, right? So it improves flexibility, balance, joint health,
strength,
right? But talking about movement and yoga for a minute, you are an expert in also adaptive yoga. So do you need to be able to move all your limbs in order to benefit from yoga, or can you have minimal mobility and still get the benefits of yoga?
Yes, for all ranges of abilities. I've had students who have spinal cord injuries, and actually one of my teachers has a spinal cord injury. One of the best yoga teachers in the world became a paraplegic at like age 13 from a car accident, and he's one of the most sophisticated yoga teachers there are. He practices Iyengar, so he's a prime example of and he's learned one of the things he's taught me the most when talking to my students is about sensation and feeling the sensation of movement and feeling of sensation in areas of the body that can't necessarily physically move.
Right.
That people say, oh, I'm numb, but he'll say, but numbness has a sensation. And then he would tell his physicians, or his caregivers, I feel things and I know, I can tell, he can say from his brain to his leg, okay, move big toe. And then they didn't believe him. And he's like, no, I know I'm doing that. And they actually saw it on the MRI.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's mind blowing, but actually you're correct. So one of the sites that actually did that research at CSU, Colorado State University, they actually looked at functional MRI and they measured cortical activation. So meaning the activation of parts of the brain with movement, but also with thinking about movement. So, and they looked at amputees. So people without the limbs, right? We're not talking about with the limbs, but they can't move without the limbs. And they looked at, can you imagine moving your legs? And that process activated the similar areas as you will expect to be activated with actual leg movement. So what you're describing, it has been studied and is mind-blowing to the point that, so that no pun intended, right? But that area of rehabilitation has been an area of interest now of thinking, okay, in people that cannot move the limbs, can the process of thinking about moving, can that actually benefit things like spasticity or pain? Of course, you're not going to enhance function, but at least can you get the benefits that you would have gotten with exercise or movement by just simply thinking about it?
Yeah. I mean, I have also experienced like watching someone that's more passive, but watching someone practice, I think also has an impact on people in the room. And being around others that are doing it, if you're able to practice with others, or even on our, on a live class online, being with others who are practicing together, you feel their energy and you take that in. You can't help but take that into your own body and energy. It's pretty powerful. But yes, I also had a teacher who was an amputee, and she has a training that for people specifically who have amputations. So really anybody can do it, and it's just a matter of using chairs, using walls, using props around the house, blankets, pillows, straps, washcloths, whatever we can find to help adapt the pose so that the person can benefit. And maybe they're not doing the exact pose that somebody else is doing, but we can find a position where they get a similar benefit.
Right.
Can I pause for just a second? And maybe we can answer a couple of these questions that have come through, because I think they're really good ones, and something that I've heard quite a bit as well. Mindy, what if somebody is struggling with vertigo or dizziness? Is there a way to practice yoga if they're dealing with those symptoms?
Yeah, we get students. I would say there's at least one person and a student or a student who in the class who has vertigo or dizziness. So the first thing we would do is we'd probably stay away from the poses that are causing that, right? Like if putting your head down below your heart is going to cause dizziness, then we want to stay away from that until we learn what is causing it. And the first thing we do is go to the breath. So we train the body to move in ways that don't cause the dizziness or vertigo.
Yeah. Excellent. And this is actually a really interesting question as well. So is there a good way to rehabilitate cognitive decline that affects the executive functionings, and whether or not any of these practices could help with that?
You want to take that on? I mean,
Sure.
that's definitely part of mindfulness, right? It's gonna get right at those executive functioning skills.
Yeah, and it was a recent meta-analysis published in 2020 that looked at, so meta-analysis means what are all the studies that have been published about certain topics and certain outcomes, and then what is the conclusion of all those studies, right? And they looked at different outcomes that were studied in people doing yoga related mind-body therapies, And the areas that have the strongest positive effect on cognition was memory, executive function, attention, and processing speed, which actually those areas are the ones that have been most frequently linked to MS. So particularly processing speed, which makes sense, right? So all of those are functions in which you need to have networks that are efficient. And if you are constantly in that going, and you never stop that process, all of those networks become inefficient and the brain becomes tired, the brain becomes fatigued. So the way you look at this is being able to, again, switch very efficiently between the on and off, and those functions will improve.
Great questions.
We see that time and time again. The focus is really so much better. It's a great thing to do before an exam for students out there. It helps anxiety, but it also helps process the information you're trying to get into your head.
Right.
Fantastic. And several folks have continued to ask about your website, Mindy, a lot of interest. And so for everyone, it's yogamovesanybody.org.
Yes. So to be clear, we have, and these classes are free. We have an on-demand system that has recordings of our classes. We have live classes about 5 days out of the week. There's even one on Sundays, which seems to be a popular day for people. And so then if you can't make the live, then certainly check out the recordings. And if there's something that you want us to do, we are always happy to do a workshop, or if you have a group and you want us to meet, we have lots of teachers willing to do that as well. If you want to have a little mini session or a topic that you want us to cover, then send me an email and let me know.
Well, this has been great, Mindy. I every time I listen to you, I learn something new. I think, if any of these are tools that we can, help our patients have in their pockets to be able to address certain symptoms, right? Be healthier, whether it's through mindfulness-based interventions, yoga, both being able to actually train their brain to do the things they want to do, right? The brain is very plastic. So I didn't ask you that, but there are no side effects of yoga, right?
You might be more peaceful. You might be more compassionate. Your memory might improve.
Well, I guess
your focus might improve.
We have to make sure that falls are not an issue. And that's why doing yoga with someone that actually understands yoga, understands movements, particularly if you have mobility issues, I will say just work with a specialist. So they understand, how to adapt these movements to your needs.
Yes. So, I highly recommend for people, if they can, have a private with somebody. It's a nice thing to do before you start a practice in a class, and just get to know the practice a little bit. And I mean, it is one way to become more familiar with it, or maybe more comfortable with it. Because look how it took you just to get into class, right? I think the thing that scares people the most, or stops people the most, is their fear.
Yeah.
So if we can make it easier on you in some way, but I just dive into somebody who is a qualified teacher.
Excellent.
So you can definitely get us online, and I'm sure in the Chicago area there has to be adaptive yoga classes in person. I'm sure there's chair yoga, and there just has to be adaptive yoga in the area. We're finding more and more therapists are interested. PT, I would say physical therapists and occupational therapists are about 30-40% of the people who take our online trainings.
That's great.
And even when we do in person.
And we're doing an event, Yoga Moves in Chicago, in October 15th. That's right?
October 15th. Yes,
October
come
15th.
check it out.
And Adrian Castillo, which is here in the audience. Adrian is our wonderful nurse practitioner that runs the Brain Health Clinic. She's going to be a speaker. I'm going to be a speaker as well. And then Dr. Tom Holland. We're going to talk about holistic care and brain health. But Mindy, I just want to say thank you again. What a wonderful way to end our 3 series of the holistic medicine for the summer. Remember, we started in June with Jackie Bainbridge talking about vitamins, supplements, and herbs in brain health. And in case you want to listen to that, that's recorded as well. In July, we had Angela Lockbird. She talked about acupuncture and pain management. And today we have the pleasure of having Mindy Eisenberg talking about mindfulness and meditation. And Kathy, what are we doing next month?
So yes, next month, another great topic, moving off of holistic medicine, but we will talk about mood disorders, cognition, and MS. So another great topic, and that is scheduled for September 8th. So I will definitely be sending out additional information on that as we get closer to that date. Real quick, I know we're getting super short on time, but I have one more question that came into the chat box here in the Q&A, sorry. And I think it's a good one. So Mindy, if I could still ask this last question, it is, what kind of breathing techniques can help with muscle pain, such as spasms? And this is something that I've heard as well quite a bit. So if you can maybe just end us on that last question, I would really appreciate it.
Of course. Looking for a more balanced breath, just being aware of your breath without trying to change it in any way is usually the most powerful way. We want to try to breathe in and out through the nose. That's going to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, or the relaxation response. And so a nice, soft, balanced breath is where we want to go. And what do I mean by that? So breathing in and out through the nose, and then an even inhale and an even exhale. I got it right next to me because I love it. It's a yoga like bean bag. It's got sand or beans in it, but you could use a bag of beans or rice at your house and lie down and put that on your belly and just feel your belly rise and fall as you breathe in and out through your nose with a nice even count. You might count to yourself like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. So this will give you feedback, and it tends to relax us when we put this on our belly. Just a little something a little heavier on the belly can be very relaxing. And this nice steady breath. Try not to breathe out through the mouth unless you're super stuffy, because that can trigger more of that fight or flight. And what we're trying to do over time, so a relaxation is going to be either a balanced breath or even the exhale being a little longer than the inhale. But when you're first starting, start with a count of 3 to 4, and maybe over time go to 4 or 5 or 6. In terms of the inhale and the exhale, the number of counts. So something nice and smooth. You could put music on in the background if that's helpful for you, some relaxation music. But I think you're asking the right question, because our students do tell us who have spasticity that it does calm down with practicing the breath.
Fantastic.
So stick with it. Like, even if the first time you're like, I'm not noticing anything, it can be very powerful. Give it a chance. Let me know how it goes. You can always email me.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to send out Mindy's contact information. And for those who were unable to jot down her website or want any additional information, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to pass that on. Mindy, I could continue to listen to you for, another few hours.
Chatting with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you're so knowledgeable in this area and provide such great information for all of us. So really appreciate having you here with us again, Mindy. And, there's probably going to be another point in time where we're going to be knocking on your door and asking you to join us again, because hearing this type of information, I think, is really, really fantastic. So thank you so much.
Getting the word out too. It's so important. Thank you
Yes,
for
absolutely.
your program. So comprehensive.
I appreciate it, Mindy. Hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their week, and hope to see you back next month for our next session. Again, thank you. Thank you, Mindy. Yeah.
Namaste. Wow.
Fantastic.